This meeting is being recorded for your benefit. If you want it later on, I put some of them up on YouTube. We're going to sit in Siddhasana. Siddhasana is suitable for most, but not all. We all face this direction, which I'm going to call the Tara wall because of Tara up there. The very commonly mispronounced Tara, because most people aren't nerds and pedants. In Siddhasana, the heels are lined up with each other in the midline of the body. There's a few variations of Siddhasana. You can also put a blanket under your shins if your knees feel like they're not quite landing. You'd open up your blanket quite loose, actually, and put it underneath like that, just to give you a sort of landing base. Attention is into the heart center. Breathing is through the nose, if possible. Jaw is soft, temples are soft. There's a connection, of course, the temporalis muscle and the masseter muscles. And we guide ourselves to the middle. So the middle, most people have heard about non-duality, this kind of thing, when we talk about South Asian soteriology. Non-dual is the middle. It's not left or right, or young or old, or male or female, or good or bad, or you and me, or right and wrong, or in or out, or us and them. It's the middle. And what's cool about the middle is you can find it at any time by finding whereabouts the mind is on the polarity scale. It's always going to be one thing or another. Like, I am understanding what Jim's saying. I'm not understanding what Jim's saying. Those are polarities. So if you're really getting it, I'm really getting this. The opposite polarity is not getting this. And then something in the middle. In yoga, this, of course, yogins aren't content to just have this as sort of abstracted philosophy. They want to feel this experientially, so we orientate ourselves to areas that feel central, and the heart is an obvious place to do that. So guiding yourself to center, for me, it's like I move my body and gently jostle my attention, which is otherwise drawn to other energetic signatures. I gently jostle it to the middle, to the heart. And that takes a little while because, like you, I'm habituated. I've got things that I habitually cling to. We use words like we become triggered, or we react, or so we guide ourselves to the center. And yoga can be defined as actions or speech or thoughts that are expressed from the center without leaving the center. So when you're in the center, it has tendencies to act, it has tendencies to think, it has tendencies to move. We call this Kriya Shakti, movement of one kind or another, movement of a thought, movement of words. We call it Icha Shakti, this sort of spontaneous desire to move. And that's how you define yoga. Let's bring our hands to the heart to further intimate the heart center. So rub them together. You can do it, as energetically as you like. It's just got to be effective, actually. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It matters what it feels like to you here and now. And then I like to turn that action into another action, which I call jostling, like shaking the hands. So that's like it's sort of transferring. It's sort of classic Newtonian physics, transferring energy. Of course, Newtonian physics breaks down at the quantum level. It's not here to talk about quantum physics, though. But anyway, on the Newtonian level, energy doesn't sort of ever stop. You can just keep moving it along. It changes its form. So the next way we move it along, from this jostling, you kind of pour it. The jostling is a bit like you're sort of pouring something. So you're pouring the energy into the heart center, and eventually that means it arrives in the heart center, maybe as a glowing sensation or visualization, or just that intense sense of being fully centered, not pulled this way or another or the other. All our habits become sometimes a little agitated by that. It's like, this can't be right. I can't possibly just be in the center. I must be doing something or reaching out in some way. But have faith in the center. There are many words, many bija or seed mantras that intimate the center in Hatha and Tantric yoga, particularly. Hung is one that's used across the board, but particularly relevant to Buddhism. You might have heard of Om Mani Padme Hum, for example. So we're going to chant Hum, imagining we're planting it, and we're going to use that Nyasa, that placement, as our anchor throughout the class. So take a deep breath in. And then you just breathe deeply, naturally after that. But you've placed that Hung as a sort of anchor. And it's okay to move a little bit around the anchor. We sort of get a little pull to peripherals, but we never up anchor from the heart. Interlace your fingers, stretch your arms diagonally down. Raise the arms without impinging on the roots of the neck. Lightly tone the tummy. So the roots of the neck are the trapezius, which is a muscle that extends from the skull down through the neck, out to the lateral third of the collarbones and back to the middle of the spine, pretty much. It's the bottom of the ribs, actually. Lightly tone the tummy. Feel free to move. Breathe through your nose. Investigative movements that are used to orientate oneself to the middle, to the center, between understanding, misunderstanding, like and dislike, and every other polarity. Good job. And then a big, wide circle to release. And the hands are going to rest in Jnana Mudra. So Jnana Mudra, different regions of India will pronounce this differently. Jnana or Jnana in Telugu, for example. And it just means to know. Jnana means to know. So what's cool about this mudra is you've got your index finger and thumb tip touching and your palms open and receptive. So that intimates that knowing is paying attention, that's the index finger and thumb tip touching, to receptivity, that's the open palm. Paying attention to receptivity. So that's really simple. Paying attention to receptivity. So in some traditions like Dzogchen, for example, which is the sort of Tibetan version of the Indian school Mahamudra, there's this sort of idea of the great perfection that, everything is already as it needs to be. So the yogin rests into that. So this mudra has similar connotations. The only thing that's missing usually is we don't pay attention. We fill it up. We make a lot of noise. Psychic noise, you could say, with our bouncing back and forth between polarities. But when you go to the middle, then there's a quietude that allows listening. And of course, there's a degree of confidence or faith that listening is what we need. After all, what we yearn to know is this now, because there's nothing else, is there? Wiggle the fingers a little bit to release them. We're going to change the cross of the legs, and I would bet good money that you chose your most comfortable cross first. So this will probably feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is good in yoga. We like discomfort. The sort of stereotype image of a yogin on a bed of nails perhaps is a bit too extreme, but taking the other cross in Siddhasana, I think we can handle that level of discomfort. So discomfort can mean when things aren't familiar, we can feel uncomfortable, right? So if this is this is not familiar, we yearn for samskaras, patterns, simply out of habit. It's just habit. The difficulty with habits and addictions is when we attribute a self to them. We don't realize they're just nature. If you get in every evening at 6, and you always have a chunk of chocolate. You know, you do it on Monday, and then on Tuesday you're going to be, oh, maybe I'll have a chunk of chocolate. Wednesday you're, oh yeah, chocolate when I get, and then the next week you don't even notice you're eating the chocolate. It's gone. You know, it's just a thing. It's a habit, which I'm sure many of us have done, been there. Maybe we're in the midst of that enjoyable habit. It was you in particular. Although I think a chunk of chocolate is not quite true. Maybe more than one. So the Chester's point. But you know, the whole thing is you can't help that. It's impossible. If you have it on Monday, you're going to think about it on Tuesday. If you have it on Tuesday, you're almost certainly going to have it on Wednesday. And before you know it, you're not really enjoying the chocolate anymore. It's just gone before you know it. And you're thinking, God, why don't I have any money? Keep buying all this chocolate. Right? So it's exactly like that. With habits, not personal. And when you feel when you're in different cross of the leg in Siddhasana, feels like I want to get back to what's habitual. It feels uncomfortable, but uncomfortable shouldn't be equated with wrong or even a problem. Discomfort challenges samskara, and samskara, or habit, is what takes the joy out of chocolate. It just makes it an expensive habit, you know. Other addictions are available. Bring your hands to the heart and give them a little rub together and breathe easy. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. You know, so you can even get addicted to your asana practice. You know, I've been there. People get cranky when they can't do their asana. They're like, oh, bloody people come around to visit me. I was going to do my asana practice. You know, it's a shame. Now we're going to turn that to jostling, and we're going to kind of pour in. For some reason, I don't know if it means anything to you, but I always got an image of those scoops that they have coffee beans and they pour coffee. It's like pouring this energy like that down into the heart. Maybe they use them not just for coffee beans, but for grains generally. And then as it comes into the heart, you don't need to jostle because there it is, vibrant, fully vibrant. You might even feel it pulsating or just very, very bright light. So this in yoga is called Nyasa. Most people who know a little bit about yoga will know the word vinyasa, which is actually, you know, it's the word Nyasa with a prefix on it, V, which usually means to separate. I won't go into the full meaning of that now. We chant Hong again one more time to keep ourselves centered, because remember, anything you do when you're centered is yogic, right? Anything you say, anything you think, that's yoga if it comes out of the heart. So take a deep breath in, inhale. And then deep breaths at the end of that. Really relaxing, and you can really feel yourself sort of anchored. And even if, you know, habits pull you, like a boat that's anchored may be pulled this way and that by various currents, but it doesn't get pulled out of its anchorage. Similarly, we're not sort of necessarily rock solid. We still feel the pulls of polarities, and that's fine. We need to allow for that. We need to allow for that. But we always come back to center, you know, we sort of pull back to center. Release your hands slowly. We'll take this with us as we progress through the class. We're going to come out of Siddhasana, which is a pose that many Hatha texts say is the best pose ever. And we're going to come into Virasana, which for some, we're going to continue to sit on our block, but you can sit on more than one block if you find your knees are uncomfortable. The inner ankles are a little bit wider than the outer hips. You can, if you want, flatten the calves. Some people have got big, cyclists have big calf muscles. If your knees are uncomfortable, sit higher on more support. You can have a blanket underneath you. Ideally, you will have a blanket underneath you, but for the sake of sort of fluidity, we'll just carry on as. And breathe through your nose. Soften the inside of the knees through your attention. So bring attention to the inside of your knees. Breathe through the nose, jaw. So study is part of what's called Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga as defined by the sage Patanjali, or author Patanjali, whatever you want to call him. So Kriya Yoga is tapas vajayeshvara pranitanani Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga is tapas, enthusiasm, burning desire, zeal, to heat up, to be passionate about, to be very, very driven in a good way. Plus, swadhyaya. Swa means to study. Adhyaya refers to reading of the texts, but the texts are about who we ultimately are. So, ontology. So here we study swadhyaya, this moment, and we must make sure that the breath flows and that we're very, very relaxed, because otherwise we're looking out for something, whereas what we want is to receive, like we did with the mudra. It's just attention to receptivity. Attention to open receptivity. That gives rise to the shaktis, the powers to know, kriya shakti, jnana shakti, the power to respond to that knowing, kriya shakti. And the spontaneous power to want to respond. So like we call it desire, icha shakti. Interlace your fingers, stretch your arms diagonally down, rest your thumbs on your legs. Resting the thumbs on the legs just stops that part of us that's anticipating. Okay, raise your arms up when you're ready. You get about 3/4 of the way, most people do, and then there's a bit of an impingement which we negate through a couple of different approaches. One is movement, so moving left, moving right, and the other is attitude. Attitude, I think, is so underused as one of the most profound and effective ways to work on your body. There's no one on this planet that would be able to meet me in the eye and say that my mind doesn't affect my body, however ignorant they are. They'd be like, oh yeah, when I get stressed, I get a tummy ache, or when I'm worried, my shoulders get tight, or whatever it is. There's always an association between the mind and the body. If I'm in love, I feel great. It's like, oh, I feel great. So don't miss a trick. Use attitude, develop attitude now in regards to this moment. You can do it with key phrases like, I like tuning into the Buddhist Centre or being in the Buddhist Centre on a Saturday morning. I like it here. I love yoga. It could just be something like that. So this is the attitude of gratitude. And it does make a profound difference to your body. Even if you say to yourself, oh my, this is so good for me. This is so good for me. I love it. Right? What a difference that makes to your body immediately, you see? It's part of traditional tantric yoga as well, if you're a traditionalist. Right? So I could, once I realize attitudes, then I'm dancing, Take a big circle to release. And bring the hands one atop the other and take a deep breath that I can hear, perhaps with a sigh-like exhale. With luck, one is followed by another, and by another, and by another, and by another. So the breaths come and go. Now we're going to release one leg. Not like releasing the hounds, it's not a dangerous event. We release one leg and bring it out. Doesn't matter which one, you pick your favorite. Go. Some of you think, oh no, I don't want my other leg to think that's my favorite. It's all right, legs don't think like that. Hold underneath your foot, Krauncha. This pose is called Krauncha or Shavasana, which is one of the only poses that's quite old. This pose, we have attestations of Krauncha going back to the 10th maybe, but certainly 11th century. So it's a 900-year-old pose and maybe more. Lean back until your foot comes off the floor. Krauncha means heron. It's a particular kind of red-breasted heron from South Asia, I'm told. And that's enough. You might think, well, how is this like a heron? It becomes heron-like if you extend the leg up. And then, I think, anyway, this is like the heron's neck and head and stuff, I think. I could be wrong. Anyway, but we don't necessarily want to do that, but we can if we want. Right? There's an option to do that, or to do any station along that road. The poses themselves are there for the purpose of absorption, so play with it in a way that absorbs you, and then that absorption should show up. You know, when you're absorbed in the now. When you're absorbed in the now, you know the now, and when you know the now, doubt disappears, and when doubt disappears, you feel good. You know, you feel super confident. Real confidence is where there's no doubt. No doubt, real lack of doubt is where there's true knowledge. Right? It's not the kind of faux confidence of someone who sort of swaggers and, you know. This is like calm confidence, deep confidence. Yeah? So you don't ever have to sort of look at anyone else. You play with the purpose of knowing this jnana shakti. You know? So anyway, I mean, each pose for me feels like it could go on forever. But we'll bring that leg down. With care, draw the shin under, right? So it moves under, so that turns the thigh out, takes pressure off the medial meniscus, that's the cartilage in the knee. And then release the other leg. Let's call it leg 2. And take a breath or two. Fingers interlaced around the shin, and then look for lightness. Great for your lower back. Really good for your lower back. And of course, the lower back is an area that has lots of compression on it that can cause problems to the disc. So going light in the lumbar is great anatomically, physically. Some people come to yoga initially because they're like, oh, I've heard it, my doctor said you should do yoga because you're getting old now, and got to do something. And they're right, doctors are right. But of course, if you're going to work on the body, you immediately realize you've got to work on the mind. It's the same, because they are the same thing. It's like deciding that there's an elephant, and you want it to come into the room. This is a weird scenario, I know. There's an elephant, you want it to come into the room, and you think, I just want your trunk. If you pull it by the trunk into the room, then the head comes in, the ears come in, the legs, it's all or nothing, you see, because it's one thing. Reach round and hold underneath your foot. That makes it a mudra. Mudra, which means a seal. The particle mud, M-U-D in Sanskrit, means joy. So that's kind of interesting. Breathe into it. Jaw soft. So one could stay like that if one... I could definitely make an effective yoga practice because I can move in ways that increase the amount the body says yes, the mind says yes, to the way things are. That increases one's confidence, right? And that increases one's contentment. You can also lift a foot if you want by leaning back. Quite a nice massage for the bum. And quite a good stretch for the rectus femoris. You have to say all these mundane things because many of our minds want the mundane boxes ticked. But actually we're usually here for deeper reasons. And we'll breathe, breathe, breathe. And again, you can straighten or bend the leg as you like. Is that tea break? No. As you like, bend. Is that chocolate break? Every half hour. Quick. Breathe easy. And you can, there's the option to straighten the leg, make it look like a heron. It doesn't really look like a heron, but breathing into it. So the point is meditation, isn't it? Samadhi, samprajñataha. Breath is everything. If your breath doesn't flow, then this isn't, it's not as beneficial. Because it's with the breath that you say yes, and when you say yes, you're saying yes to the way things are. And what the way things are is interdependent. Muscles are interdependent with nerves. Nerves are interdependent with psychology. Psychology is interdependent with chemicals. Chemicals are interdependent with breath. Psychology is interdependent with society. I could go on. We're not even on the level of physics or particle physics really yet. Okay, bring that leg slow down. Bring it back under. Shin goes under. And then just draw the butterfly out and back. Interlace your fingers one more time. Thumbs resting on your legs. Breathe through your nose. Raise up without impinging on the roots of the neck. Keep your eyes soft. Keep your eyes soft. Like you're looking at a sunset or something, you know, your eyes soft. Something like you're looking at something beautiful. The roots of the neck should flow. How do you know if parts of the body are flowing or not? Your breath. Your breath's like a sort of monitor, like a gauge. So if you bring your attention to your neck, if the neck is holding tension, your breath will hold tension too. If the breath releases the tension while you're aware of your neck, the neck will release the tension too. Why is this? Well, I've already explained the interdependence of reality. You know, there's no self-respecting doctor, scientist, psychologist who would, on analysis, want to or be able to deny interdependence. The point of me talking about interdependence is you can't know it individually. You've got to give to know. We often quote, I say we, me, I often quote St. Augustine, who says if you want to know the ocean, you can't put the ocean into a cup. Don't try and do that. But throw your cup into the ocean. That's how you know the ocean. The ocean for St. Augustine is God, but for us here, it's the interdependent field, which we often call the goddess. Big wide circle to release. Good job, everyone. Rest your hands, take a breath. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. Just let the breath flow for a couple of breaths or so. And then we're going to dismount with the right amount of coolness, calmness, collectiveness. And we're going to place our feet just like I've got mine here. We don't want to be too far back on our lift mat. The mat is a lift. It's, you know, to a tiny creature, that's a cliff face, that edge. You don't want to fall off that cliff face. Hold your big toes, both of them. Ubaya. Ubaya means both. So, and then you lean back and take a breath or two. Yeah. So I looked at Tara for a moment, and then you looked at Tara, because that's what happens. It's nice, isn't it? So she's got Abhaya Mudra. I just want to clarify the two terms. Abhaya, that's her hand like that. Ubhaya, that's holding both big toes. Don't confuse the two. Huh? Abhaya, Abhaya means fear. Abhaya means without fear. So she's going, nothing, don't be afraid. Isn't that lovely? That's what she's saying. She's like, don't be afraid. I always hear that as come here. Come here, don't be afraid. And lean back and breathe easy. So this is the Tara room. I feel it absolutely jam-packed, filled with blessing energy from Tara. So as your feet come off the floor, you can move. And what does she mean by come here? She is the field, the interdependent field. She is the Devi in one of her many forms. So, you know, that could sound a bit like, whoa, this is getting far out, Jim, you know. But the interdependent field is just that everything's interdependent. And you can't know that by thinking, but you can know it by giving. Why can't you know it by thinking? Because thinking is little packages. You know, like, and the reality is not like that. You can extend your legs if you want. One at a time, both together, you know, both apart or both close. Trying to achieve the posture is not obviously yoga practice, but instead using the posture as a portal to that field, right? So in particle physics, a particle physicist will happily tell you that there aren't really such things as particles. You know, they've just sort of done themselves out of a job because they're like particle physics. There's no such thing as particles. The ultimate identity of a particle is its field. Electrons can appear as particles, but really that's excitations in a field, the electron field. So it's the same here, right? Particles, this body, these sensations are part of a field. Use it like Hansel and Gretel, like a trail of breadcrumbs. Okay, well done. If you're ready to bring the legs down, you bring them down, you bring the soles of the feet together and knees apart. And I like a little wiggle myself. If I wiggle forwards, it can help turn the pelvis. Also, an additional movement of the buttock flesh can be helpful. People with more buttock flesh have more advantage in yoga, so do try and fatten up your bum. I suggest eclairs and other things, but because you can then use, it's like, yeah, that's the best news I heard all day. yeah, write that down. Jim says eclairs are the best thing. So, because you can use the flesh to move the bones into better positions. So that's what we're doing here. You can hold your feet if you want. Movement can help too. I use movement in two ways in this pose. I use it in lots more than, but I'll tell you about two ways. Two ways is, one way is to release the adductors muscles, the inner thigh muscles. So if you move, as you move to the opposite side, the leg rises up and you can feel a little stretch, right? And then you sort of feel into that and imagine that stretch getting longer. So that's one way. So I can stretch out by leaning to the opposite side, to the side I want to stretch out, and extend right out from the groin. That's one way that movement can help a lot. Also, movement can help direct you again towards the inner edge of the sitting bones, right? If you think of the sitting bones like, I mean, they're kind of tuberosities, they're like that, like a sort of rocking horse. But they've obviously got an inner edge, more medial, and an outer edge, more lateral. We want to be towards the inner edge, so we kind of take the flesh as well as we can, and the bones as well as we can, to position ourselves to the inner front edge. And just that process is a process of, attunement, isn't it? So you can think of yoga as attunement. Tuning into the field, tuning into Tara, beautiful Tara. She's here, kicking out those blessing energies. And all you got to do is nothing at all. You don't even have to think about it. So a few deep breaths here. The pose is Baddha Konasana. Breath is everything. So if I remember correctly, I'll have to look at her again in a minute, but I think she's probably got Virada Mudra as well, as a Baya Mudra, which is like that. Yeah. So, Virada is gift bestowing or just giving. You see it on many deities. So that's a big part as well. So she says, come here and give. Come here and give. Or you could say it another way. The way that you come here is through giving. Now, that's not just, being nice to people and giving them things, but it's now, giving in this moment. So you do that via your breath. That's how it's done for every human being on the planet. You give or you abstain from giving via your breath, and you're always either giving or abstaining from giving. Okay, this is such a great pose, I think. We're going to ease out of it because there are other great things in store for you. Dos bloques could be Spanish for 2 blocks. Who knows? Spanish people probably. We're going to put 2 blocks long side to long side. If you've got longer legs, you put a bit more space between the blocks, right? If you've got longer legs, you put a bit more space between the blocks. So at home, we're putting the blocks like that. They can be together if you've got shorter legs, or longer legs a little way apart. And then you fold them out. I call it the Demarcara Method, because my friend Demarcara did it in a class once, and I copied it forever afterwards. And as one should, I respectfully give him the credit for this marvelous invention of using the mat over the blocks. So legs. And I'll take this microphone off because it goes funny when you lay down. Tuck your buttocks under. Come to your elbows. Tuck your buttocks under. Again, so you lengthen the lower back. As many times as you can get more length out of your lower back, and then you take your elbows out and you lay down on your back. Stretch your arms straight up to the ceiling, straight up towards the ceiling. And breathe. And breathe. Then move your arms, when you're ready, side to side, so that your shoulder blades take turns in lifting. Obviously, if you go to one side, the shoulder blade on the opposite side lifts. And then using that movement with intuition, which takes giving, right? Remember, Tara says, come here to the field. Like this. You do it by giving. So as you're moving side to side, your arms begin to come over the head. And there's a real aspect of this, which is giving, right? Not clinging, not grasping, trying to fit reality into a container, when reality doesn't have any edges. And eventually the arms might work their way down over however long it takes to the floor with less and less resistance. You can, of course, also put your hands on blocks or cushions if you prefer, but you might be surprised how much more movement the body has through multiple repeated movements, through attitudinal shifts, and of course through time. I do hundreds of movements. I repeat, because every time I repeat, I find another stray fiber that I'll bring on board. And eventually meditation is where there are no stray fibers anymore. Every fiber of the body, which equates to every fiber of our being, is on board. You've cleansed the nerves of other directional instructions or habits in the body. You cleanse the body of habits. So this is the process. Breath is everything. Breathe deep. Keep the jaw passive. Feel free to repeat arm movements anytime. I'm sure that most of us will be able to find another fiber that's still not incorporated and incorporate it. As the breath gone, bring it back with a deep breath. Allow your breath to allow your being to say yes. Change the cross of your legs. The other leg goes in front. Fairly simple to do. I think it's useful, for me it's useful anyway, to bring the hands to the top of the buttocks and scoot under again. So that's an option. And then it gives you the option again to move the arms, which I think is really super. So you move the arms at any pace. Don't get bogged down by being yogic. One of the least yogic things to do in the world is to try to be yogic. Like have a yogic face. What do yoga people look like? What sort of things do they say? Do yoga people swear? I don't think so. Maybe they do. I don't know. Being yogic is just full of doubt. Go beyond that. Jaw soft, so the field is beyond. Beyond left and right, good and bad, you and me, male and female, young and old, in and out, us and them. Knowing and not knowing, it's beyond that. So if you're like trying to know what I'm saying, that's a polarity. That's not it. It is not a polarity. Breath indicates when doubt is gone. Doubt is gone when you're not in polarities, because reality is not polarized. Bring your legs together, knees point up. Bring your arms forwards and we're going to touch our thighs. We're kind of rising up a bit like a zombie, right? To touch our own thighs. You got it. So that's abdominal muscles. I'm sure you can feel that. Make sure the neck muscles are not involved by keeping the chin close to the chest and really using the abdominal muscles. Slowly return down. Keep your chin towards your chest. Let your hands slide down your legs. And then pop your hands underneath your head, fingers interlaced, and catch a deep breath in with a deep breath out. And then I hope another breath will follow the same way. Deep breath in, deep breath out. So this intimates giving, Varada Mudra. You can see on Tara, she has Varada Mudra and Abhaya Mudra. And so she's giving us the teachings today. Flex up the hips, the lower back is close to the floor. So flex up the hips means lift the feet, sorry. Lift the feet. And flexing the hips just means closing the angle between the thigh and the pelvis in some way. So you can close the angle between the thigh and the pelvis a little bit more, and it will push your lower back into the floor. Then you raise up your head, and then that brings the upper and lower fibers of the abdominals engaged, and breath is everything. Right? So the perfections, according to Mahayana Buddhism, they start with giving. Giving, and that's the instruction. To know the field represented by Tara, give. Let the head lower down slowly. It's called eccentric contraction. And then let the feet lower down slowly. That's eccentric contraction of the lower fibers of the abdominals and the psoas. And then the feet finally land, and everyone takes a deep breath. Hopefully some of the out-breaths are beginning to become a bit more sigh-like. One is beginning to move into the arms of Tara, as it were. I hope you're someone that gets on with metaphors. And then flex up again, lift up again. But this time open the angle at the back of the knees to something like 90 degrees, please. Yes, I realise all of those words rhymed. And then the soles of the feet are against, like a wall, like 90-degree wall. So imagine your feet are against a wall that's 90 degrees to the floor, perpendicular. Then lift up your head. And then you're going to turn towards Tara and bring the opposite elbow and opposite knee towards each other. So maybe at home you're not turning necessarily towards Tara, depends how you've got the screen set up, but just turning to one side and then turning the other way. Let's call it side 2. Your elbow and knee don't have to reach, by the way, but that's the trajectory. The knee and elbow are moving towards each other, but they don't have to reach. Return to center, lower the head, lower the feet, take a deep breath that I can hear. In and out, and in and out, in and out. And the flowing of the breath is the stirring of the pot of habits. And when that pot of habits is stirred, those habits for a moment can't find their orientation. They're disorientated, and so they don't know where to cling. And so this is a technique for negating habit temporarily. Now we're going to move in, we're going to sidle in, if that's the word, closer to the blocks, right? So take your hands out from under your head and use your triceps. So you position yourself as if you're in as if you've got a jetpack, which we should have by now. It is, way overdue on jetpacks. So you sidle in, and then breathe. I think people have invented them, but they're like really dangerous, and people are catching fire. So you get really close in, the feet close into the bum as well, and then you can lift up your pelvis. Okay, so that's about as close as elevation with a jetpack as you're going to safely get. So you lift the pelvis, and then you can move up and down, and left and right, and shake, and whatever. The thing is to loosen the lumbar, right? So bouncing the pelvis, swaying the pelvis, circling the pelvis, shaking the pelvis. You don't worry about what it looks like. You concern yourself with, does it feel like loosening? And when questions disappear and are replaced by absorption, you know it's working, right? You know it's working. So this is a version of Setu Bandhasana, the bridge formation. Okay, lower yourself down, press whatever button you have to press on your jetpack controls to lower your pelvis, and then catch a breath. I want to hear some deep breaths from you in particular, please. So just let some happen. Even if you just let one breath happen, that can be a big deal for us, can't it? A real turning point of our lives can be letting one breath happen. You let 2 breaths happen. That's, you really turn the corner. If you keep letting the breath happen, right, forever, you never go back to not letting the breath happen, then you've entered into Buddhahood, right? That means you're a Buddha. Roll over when you're ready onto your side and come up from the side. Well done. Move the blocks and retain, if you've got a cork block, we want to use that. Cork block. But you can use a regular block. Some people prefer a regular block. The famous yogin Kadeen Morkham prefers a flat block. So, I have to mention that because her experience is something to be respected. I prefer the cork block. So, you might fall into either category, but we both love you, whichever way you use. Let's put the block over this side. Fold your mat. I've got one of the old thin mats, so I'm going to fold it again. But you can just fold yours once, probably is enough, and then you kneel on it. Hopefully that's enough padding. You're facing this side of the room or whatever side you're facing at home. But this is for a bit more padding for your knee. Then, having placed your knee on that padded area, you stretch out to the block. And the block should be placed so that your standing leg slightly slopes. So if you look at my standing leg, it's slightly sloping. The top of the thigh is slightly closer to the block than the bottom. You can overdo that like that. That's too much. So that's why I say slightly slopes, right? The idea of a slight slope is that the hip goes in, the groin goes up. So let's do that now. Hip in, groin up. You can even sort of intimate it, play with it with your hands. Hip in, groin up. And then that up action goes all the way through. Then you follow it through to your fingers. So raise your hand. Lightly tone your tummy. Put your other hand on your tummy. Yeah, just encourage it to draw in and up. Like you're some sort of flamenco dancer or something. Okay. And then inhale. Keep that light tone. Exhale. Arm down. Hinge from the top of the thigh. Press the back of the leg up towards the front of the leg. Raise your arm, and that's already a big stretch. I think you'll agree. There are other options, like taking the arm up and possibly over. But for some people, that would just cause sorrow, lamentation, and despair. So you come to wherever. You keep turning and breathing. Turning and breathing. It's called Parikasana. Parikasana. Breath is everything. Okay, come up. Slow, calm. Walk your leg towards the other leg. That wakes you up, doesn't it? Second side. So I used to call that the yogin's espresso, but I don't have good knowledge of espressos because I've drunk precisely none. I've never had an espresso in my life. I used to drink coffee in the 80s, but that was like Nescafe and things like that, That was those days. I have actually had about 6 coffees in the last 30 years, and they've all been in the last 6 months, but none of them have been caffeinated, you'll be glad to hear, because you couldn't trust me on that. So the heel lines up with the knee. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but I'm mentioning it now. And then the hip goes in and the groin goes up, right? So that's where you've got to have the slope. Hip goes in, groin goes up. Got to be able to get that up action. Yeah, you got it. There you go. It often makes that mantra come out. Stretch the arms, turn the palms, raise the arm, keep that tummy toned. You can even bring your foot up in a little wheelie for a moment if you like. I quite like a wheelie, being a kid of the 70s. Inhale, exhale, look up, breathe. Back of the thigh towards the front of the thigh, light tone in the tummy, arm stretches up and maybe over, but probably not because it's intense. Tivra samveganam asanaha. That's the Sanskrit validating the intensity of what we're doing now. Tivra means intense. Samvega comes from a word that means to be agitated. It's a Buddhist phrase, which means to be inspired to practice. Okay, Come up calm, slow, without rush. There we go. Welcome everyone to the world. Good. Now open up your yoga mat. And we're going to bring ourselves up to standing, probably using a cork block. Sometimes these mats get a bit slippery. You can use various things to stop them being slippery, like you can use a belt underneath your foot. I'll check to see if I've got my liquid chalk that I bring, because that can help some people. At home, I'm sure you've got a non-studio mat. Never buy studio mats, even if you're a studio owner. I'm just looking for the liquid chalk. Step your feet apart, hands on your hips. The cork block should be over on the right side of the mat while I look for this liquid chalk, if I've got it. So hands are on the hips. The block is on the right side of your mat. Oh, maybe I haven't got it. And the tummy is lightly toned. There's buoyancy on the pelvic floor. No. Okay. I don't think I've got the liquid chalk, so don't slip, anyone. Don't sweat. Don't slip. Oh. I've got it. It's here if you need it. Sorry, that's a bit intense. Hands on the hips. Breathe easy. Back toes in, front foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot. If you do slip, just grab this liquid chalk, put a little bit on your feet. Really good. Stretch your fingers. But obviously, I can't offer that to you Zoomers at home. Can't put it through the screen. Inhale, exhale, come down to your brick. Good. Raise your top arm up. Breathe easy. Good, that looks great. Okay, see if you can follow this next instruction. It's quite complicated. Enjoy the pose. Okay, I'll give it again in case you missed it or couldn't follow it. And I'll add a little extra detail, because I think some of you are quite mature and wise. Really enjoy the pose. All right, you're doing pretty well. I'll add the advanced practitioner's instruction. Totally enjoy the pose. So that involves play, it involves giving, it involves surrender, doesn't it? Good. Inhale. If you feel the brick's not too heavy to come up with it, then it saves you going back down for it. Turn the feet forwards, catch your breath, place the brick on what I will call side 2. I'm using conventional language. Back toes in, front foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot, finishing off the turn on the heel. And raise the arms. Light tone in the tummy. So light tone in the tummy is something you reiterate, like a sort of, it's repeated, like a current running through a river will influence things in the river. Put a current through this in up, and then raise your arm up on the inhale. Exhale, come down to your brick. Block. Huh? Jaw soft, eyes soft, breathing deep. So giving, if you want, Giving if you want to. So giving is giving to the field. The result of giving, as we know, Tara says, come to me through giving, right? The result of giving is you come to Tara. Tara represents the liberative, compassionate experience of the field. Right? It's compassionate because it gives you what you need. It gives you the ability, the root of the word Shakti is Shak, which means to be able. Inhale, calmly come up. You can leave the brick. Walk your feet towards each other. Catch a breath. Have a little shake out, a little kick out, a little movement of your legs. Huh? Okay, Vriksha, tree. Another name for tree, I always like to tell people this is Padapa. Pada means foot, and Pa intimates drinking, foot drinker. A tree is a foot drinker, drinks through its feet. Kind of cool, isn't it? So start with your toes, which are kind of your roots, kind of like if you're a tree, that's kind of the root. So I move my feet a lot, you might notice. But it's not random, and it's not because someone told me to. It's more of a response to the feeling of flow that we want in yoga, you see. So we want flow, so movements are that conduce to that are the right movements. So for me, I need to move, or there is often quite a bit of movement, and I think that they help to usurp the mind slipping into a sort of modus operandi. You know, a person doing something is the fundamental modus operandi. And we're going to raise up the right heel, right? And just move the leg a little, just to bring a bit of fluidity to the inner thigh. You can also play with the standing leg foot to wake that up. Huh? The three arches, the medial, the lateral, the transverse. Three arches. Who knew there were three arches to each foot? Well, you do now. Medial on the big toe side. Most people know about that arch. Some people have pronated arches there. You could probably guess there's an arch on the little toe side too. And there's also one across the foot. Waking them up means bringing them online, and that takes repetition and breath, free breath. When you got some sense of them being, you know, a little bit more online, then you raise up and place your foot as high as you can into the top of the inner thigh. And I probably don't need to explain this, but you probably think you wear those shorts because they just look fab. You know, that's probably what you think. They just look amazing. That's why you wear them. But I also wear them. They obviously do look fab. I also wear them for poses like this because sticking is quite useful. Skin to skin is quite useful. But you can, if you've got leggings which you're not sticking to, try rolling them up, or you can put a belt around the standing leg as well, and that provides some adhesion for your foot. Hands to the heart, breathing through the nose, eyes soft, brain soft, jaw soft. So this is a pose that you know, we find in ancient texts, not so much Indian texts, but texts from the Greeks, who are of course in India at the time of Alexander, and they said that the practitioners would hold a stick. So let's hold a stick, imaginary stick, obviously. Okay, and they said that these people would raise the stick above their head, standing on one leg, and they would do that until that leg fatigued. And then you think, well, they'd probably go for a Kit Kat and a cup of tea, but no, they go straight to the other leg, and then that got tired, they go back to the first one, and they do this all day long, the texts tell us, out in the blazing sun of India. Why they did it, well, that's another story. But anyway, we're intimating those. Okay, bring your stick down. They actually were called Danda Swamis, the practitioners. Well done. So Danda means a stick. So they were Danda Swamis. We don't have the direct Sanskrit. We have a Greek word that some scholars think might be the Greek version of the word Danda Swami. Anyway, raise the heel up of the other leg. Take a breath, bring awakeness to your foot. So let's do it now. Bring awakeness to your foot. You can move the other leg to loosen the adductors, but bring awakeness to the arches of your foot, the medial, the lateral, the transverse. Right? And when you're ready, if you're ready, when you feel your foot is online, it takes me a while. I always had quite pronated arches as a kid. My mum used to take me to Clark's, you know, to those machines that go, and it used to terrify me. I didn't know when to stop. So, but anyway, you know, bringing your arches online is important, and then bring your heel into your thigh, find your heel, hands into prayer. You can do this with your leg lower. You can even cup your knee, yeah, with your foot, so the arches of the foot go over the knee, or it can be on the floor. Even the toes can be on the floor. Breathing easy. Relationships. That's what's going on, isn't it? Here and now. Inner leg, outer leg, front leg, back leg, and so on. So we'll pay some homage to the Danda Swamis by holding a stick and raising it up. Okay. Keeping the roots of the neck soft. And breathing easy, the roots of the neck soft, obviously means the mind is soft too. I think this pose is great. The practice is originally was done to negate karma. So that's got to be good, isn't it? Okay. Groovy. Bring your stick down, place it, because you might use that later, you don't want to break it. Put it down carefully. And then bring your feet together and shake out. Shake out. Take a breath or two, shake out. Now we're going to come into Uttanasana. We're going to use our block. So turn around. So you face towards the midline if you're here in the room. Well, I know you know that you are here in the room. But at home, you can, in any direction you like. Have a look down at your feet. Have a generous hip width and the block ahead of you. Generous hip width. So how do you ascertain hip width? Use your greater trochanter of your femur, which you find by pushing your pelvis to one side in this way that you see on the back cover of Transformer by Lou Reed, which you must have in your record collection. Otherwise, you haven't got a proper record collection yet. So it goes to one side like that, and you find that. Have you got that record, Tom? Do you know that record? Yeah, I'll go. Just checking. Just checking. Okay. Anyway, the back cover. You know the back cover? It's like that. Like that with the cap. Yeah. Great. Classic cover. Anyway, enough of Lou Reed for now. Make sure your feet are parallel, as if a line were running through the gap between your second and third toe and out of the middle of your heels, right? Let's have a look. Through parallel lines through the gap between the second and third toe and out of the middle of the heels. And then raise your arms and tone your tum. And find fibers. Find them. So this is like you kind of reaching around through movement to find fibers to lift up. So, feel a bit freer, like don't think you've got to think. The trouble is we've all been educated to sort of think about things before we do them because there's so many rules and regulations that are sort of nonsensical, that are just particular to particular societies and time epochs and familial biases and so on. That, right from little, when we were all sort of instinctive and lovely, people are like, don't do that. And you're like, oh, okay, I've got to remember not to do that because it doesn't actually make sense not to put your elbows on the table or whatever it was, but you got but actually you don't need to go through thinking. Don't go beyond that. Unmani, beyond thinking. Inhale, raise up. Exhale, fold and reach for your block, which you can turn any way. And breathe easy, you got it. You could be right on your fingertips. We want the back to be flat. That is to say that the lumbar should have a natural inward curve. Now, the release of your lumbar depends on the release of your hamstrings. The release of your hamstrings depends on several factors. Time is one, but movement is another. So feel free to play a little. Something that can help is doing things like moving back and forth on the feet, lifting the toes or lifting the heels in your own way. You don't have to, do it in any contrived way, but it just needs to be effective. Some people find shaking the legs or bouncing the bum can be useful. That can, like this sort of bit like a bee when it's showing other bees where the honey is. Does a little bounce of its bum. Okay. And if the lumbar goes deep enough, right, then you get the natural curve back, the inward curve. That normally takes, long time, really long time. But if it does come, if that curve comes, and it keeps coming, keeps dipping in the lumbar, it can feel uncomfortable unless you go lower. So you are allowed to go lower if it makes the pose more comfortable. For most people, it doesn't make the pose more comfortable. For most people, it will make the back tighter. But I want all options to be open. And eventually, if you stayed long enough, and you practiced for many months and, you moved, you might find going lower is the right thing in that circumstance. But for most of us, as I say, it isn't. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. Uttanasana. Sometimes it's nice to really hang. If you want to really hang, to make sure your back is soft, you can bend your knees and you can hold your elbows or biceps. But your back should be soft. Just want to reiterate that. It shouldn't be dull, aching or painful. So bending your knees, if needs be, and it is for most people.
Okay, we're going to sort of skulk forward. So bring your hands onto the floor, bend your knees as much as you need to. You can push the block out of the way. And we're going to just kind of crawl forwards a bit like some marvelous creature. And then take the feet back as well. So the marvelous creature, of course, is a dog. So Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Breathing deep, eyes soft. Investigative movements. If you're slipping on your mat, you can use the liquid chalk or a belt underneath the heels of the hands. Well done. Come down to hands and knees, slow and easy. Catch your breath. Just wag your tail a little bit. Jaw soft, eyes soft. Then we're coming all the way down to the side of our body, facing towards Tara. Bend the leg we're laying on. These classes go quick. Extend the inner groin. Lightly tone the tummy, lift and turn. Elbows, forearms, wrists. The elbows a little further forwards than the shoulders. A bit like a sphinx, an Egyptian lioness, mythical Egyptian lioness. And then move, move, move for the purpose of absorption. So, disappear. I know you've disappeared before into the taste of, coffee or wine or chocolate or something other, that you find delicious. I know you've disappeared into a kiss before, or into a sunset, or into the feeling of water on your skin and swimming. So disappear now. It's exactly the same as disappearing into a flavor. Top leg on top of the bottom leg, curl up from the side. And then come back down, still facing Tara if you're in the room live, at home maybe as well, or whatever direction suits you. Bend the leg you're laying on, extend the inner groin. Got 90 degrees, you're going to suck in that tongue, do your best. Then lift and turn. Elbows, forearms and wrists. Jaw soft, eyes soft. Just massage it in a little bit, right? Massage it in a little bit. The breath really is our way of saying yes. And that's what's required. That's what Tara's asking us. She's saying, come here, by saying yes, by giving, right? By letting go. Giving and letting go are synonyms. Breath is your guru. Top leg on top of the bottom leg. And come up just so that you can come back down, because we're going to come into Shavasana. But you might want to put something warmer on first. So please feel free to blanket up or sock up. Tom made a very wise investment at the beginning of the class. He put his socks on the radiator, and now he's feeling the benefits. Great wisdom there. Great wisdom, Tom. So we're going to lay on our backs. This pose is called Shavasana, and it's one of the only poses. There's only 4 different, not even poses, but techniques mentioned in the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra. So that I'm just mentioning that to show you the importance of this pose. In the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra, the third text, as far as we understand, chronologically speaking, of the Hatha texts, they only mention 4 techniques. One of them is this. Lay on your back in a lonely place, a place where you feel no one's going to trouble you, don't have to be anybody. It could be a forest clearing. It could be a meadow. It could be an empty beach. Or it could be your yoga mat at home or your yoga mat here in the Buddhist Centre. So lay on your back in a lonely place, a place where you can be on your own,
your mouth facing the sky, as if you were dead. With limbs completely loose. Interestingly, the text then tells us to look. It says, look at the big toe of your right or left foot. But because we're laying on our backs, we have to presume that look at means to sense, to see with another sense. So to feel into the sensations of your big toe. Because everything is everything, you can use your big toe as a portal, as a trail of breadcrumbs, to trace it back to what it's ultimately part of. A field, the goddess, the interdependent. You might feel it as a vibrant expansion. As a tingling field that you rest in, of energetic dance, sways and movements. The goddess is sometimes portrayed as a dancer. Her silks and hair moving this way and that represent the movements of everything. Thoughts in our head, planets around distant stars. The field is and remains and always has been the backdrop for every sensation of every kind, every being of every kind, every collection of beings of every kind. The particle, me, myself and I, is just a point, an excitation, a momentary excitation in that field. A little point of uniqueness vibrating before it goes back to the field and vibrates somewhere else in another moment. Allow a little bit of movement of your toes, feeling that movement is coming from the field and the fingers as well, a little bit of movement. And stretches, little stretches. And when you feel ready, bend the legs and place the soles of the feet onto the floor. Scoot the buttocks under. Roll onto your side. If you're here in the studio, roll to face away from this side of the room, away from the Tara wall. At home, you can roll to your left. Then again, in your own time, roll to your other side. and lay as comfortably as you can there. Knees drawn up, tummy soft. Let yourself come round naturally with that sort of deep knowing in the background that the background is the Pia, is the goddess. And so when ready, you come up nice and easy from the side. May the merit gained in our acting thus go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. Om. Thanks, Roomers. Thank you very much, Roomers. Thanks, Zoomers. Lovely to see you. Oh, thanks, gang. It's really great to see you. I'm scanning through you. Oh, you look great. Nice jumper. Nice, like that. See you all soon. Be good. Bye.